What if I told you that a 2,500-year-old prophecy, a story of staggering divine intervention, is unfolding not in some distant imagined future, but right now, on our television screens, in the very headlines that cross our phones every morning? For years, I found myself wrestling with a deep, unsettling question. I'd read the Gospels, I'd studied the life of Jesus, and I'd seen the miraculous, world-changing effect of his ministry. And yet, there was this profound mystery. How could the Jewish people, the very people to whom God first revealed himself, the people who were steeped in the prophetic writings of their Messiah, how could they have missed him? How could they, as a nation, have turned away from the very one they were created to await? It was a question that haunted me, a puzzle with a missing piece so large it seemed to swallow the entire picture. It's a question that many of us, I think, have carried in our hearts, a tragic irony at the very heart of our faith. We believe in the Messiah, and we believe he came to the Jewish people first, but they as a whole still do not believe. And for centuries, this has been one of the greatest barriers to faith. People look at it and say, well, if he really was who he said he was, why don't his own people believe in him? I wrestled with this. I prayed about it. I searched the scriptures, and what I found, what was revealed to me, was something so stunning, so breathtakingly specific, that it changed everything I thought I knew about God's plan. It wasn't that they missed him. It was that a specific prophesied sequence of events had to take place first. And the first of those events, my friends, is not only underway, it has been for over 70 years. This is a story of a nation reborn, a nation that shouldn't even exist, and a world's irrational obsession that can only be explained by a hand far greater than our own. Just think about that for a moment. Picture the world in 1947, a world still reeling from the horrors of a war that nearly wiped out the Jewish people entirely. For nearly 2 millennia, since the year 70 AD, there had been no Jewish nation, no Jewish government, no Jewish army. The people had been scattered across the globe, living as strangers, surviving pogroms and persecutions. They were a people with no home, no land, no sovereignty. And yet on May 14, 1948, something impossible happened. A nation was born. A country that had been dead and buried for 1,900 years suddenly sprang back to life. No one in the history of the world had ever seen anything like it. And the most incredible part, it was exactly what the Bible had prophesied. In Ezekiel 36, God says, I will take you from among the nations, gather you out of all countries, and bring you into your own land. And Isaiah in 66:8 asked a question that seemed utterly absurd until 1948. Shall a nation be born at once? Well, on May 14th, 1948, it was. But that's not even the most stunning part of the story. You see, the moment Israel declared its independence, 5 neighboring Arab armies attacked. They promised to push the Jews into the sea. On paper, it was an absolute massacre waiting to happen. The Arabs had more soldiers, more tanks, more planes, more of everything. Israel, in contrast, was a ragtag collection of Holocaust survivors and refugees, many with obsolete weapons. It was a classic David and Goliath story, and by every human measure, Goliath should have won, but something impossible happened. Israel didn't just survive, they won. And that was just the beginning of a pattern that would repeat itself again and again, defining the next 7 decades. In the Six-Day War of 1967, a coalition of 11 Arab nations, with numerical superiority in every category, attacked a tiny Israel. The world expected to see the end of the Jewish state. Instead, in just 6 days, Israel tripled its territory. It's truly unbelievable. Then came the Yom Kippur War in 1973, a surprise attack on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar when the entire country was fasting and praying. The initial hours were a disaster for Israel, and it seemed they were finally doomed. But once again, something happened that defied all military logic. The tide turned, and Israel ended the war with its armies within striking distance of both Cairo and Damascus. Time after time, it seems as though Israel's enemies are struck with confusion, with madness, and they make inexplicable errors that lead to their own defeat. But what could possibly explain this? How do you account for a nation smaller than the state of New Jersey, generating more international controversy and military conflict than almost any other country on earth? The answer, my friend, is found in the very prophecy that explains what must happen before Israel accepts its Messiah. It's a prophecy that tells of a cup of trembling, a supernatural obsession that will take hold of the surrounding nations. It's what's happening right now, and it's just the first sign. You see, what's unfolding is so much bigger than politics, so much grander than military conflicts. It's a divine drama, a biblical timeline coming to life before our very eyes. And this is just the beginning of what I've uncovered. If you want to know what happens next, the second sign that is accelerating faster than you can imagine, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back. Because what I'm about to share will make you look at the news in a completely different way. You'll begin to see the hand of God at play, just as I did. You've got to understand this cup of trembling isn't just a political or military phenomenon. It's something far more profound. It's what happens when nations, for some inexplicable reason, become obsessed with a tiny, vulnerable country to the point where they make decisions that defy all logic and go against their own best interests. And this obsession, my friends, is exactly what the prophet Zechariah saw. In the book of Zechariah, chapter 12, he writes, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem." A cup of trembling, or a cup of drunkenness in ancient culture, was something that made you irrational, unstable, unable to think clearly. It was a poison that made you hurt yourself while thinking you were striking at your enemy. Just look at the news today. The United Nations has passed more resolutions condemning Israel than all other nations combined. Just think about that for a moment. More condemnations than North Korea with its concentration camps, more than China with its human rights abuses, more than Iran with its public executions. It's an irrational, a disproportionate, and frankly, a supernatural obsession. And what's more, the prophecy doesn't say this siege will be successful. It says the opposite, that those who drink from this cup of trembling will end up hurting themselves. And isn't that exactly what we're seeing? Nations that boycott Israel lose out on economic opportunities. Organizations that obsess over Israel lose credibility. The cup of trembling isn't hurting Israel, it's hurting those who drink from it. It's truly a staggering fulfillment of ancient scripture, isn't it? But what if I told you there was a second sign, even more specific, even more shocking, that has been unfolding right before our very eyes? This is the one that gave me goosebumps when I first discovered it. Zechariah, the same prophet, continues his vision just a few verses later. In Zechariah 12:3, he writes, "On that day I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who heave it away will surely be cut in pieces." My jaw literally dropped when I first read that, and then looked at modern history. Think about it. What does it mean for a city to be a burdensome stone in the ancient world? It was a test of strength. People would try to lift these incredibly heavy stones, and if they weren't strong enough, they would end up seriously injuring themselves. They would be cut in pieces. And that, my friends, is exactly what has happened with Jerusalem for the past 70 years. Every time a nation or a coalition has tried to move Jerusalem or take it away from Israel, they have been cut in pieces in the process. When the Arab armies attacked in 1948, their main objective was to capture Jerusalem. They were defeated so decisively that Israel ended up controlling the western part of the city. In 1967, the Arab coalition had a clear objective: recapture Jerusalem. Instead, Israel captured all of Jerusalem along with the West Bank. They didn't just survive, they tripled their territory. And in 1973, in the Yom Kippur War, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack with the goal of recovering lost territories, including Jerusalem. Once again, Israel ended up in a position to march on Cairo and Damascus. Every single time, the burdensome stone Jerusalem has injured, shattered, and cut in pieces those who tried to lift it. It's not just a coincidence, it's a pattern, a supernatural reality predicted 500 years ago. It's incredible. But Zechariah's prophecy goes even deeper. He writes, "I will strike every horse with confusion and its rider with madness." In biblical prophecy, horses often represent military power. So what does it mean for God to strike every horse with confusion and its rider with madness? It means that Israel's enemies become their own worst enemies. Their military plans fail, their strategies become confused, their leaders make irrational decisions that lead to their own destruction. And isn't that exactly what we've seen again and again? In the Six-Day War, the Arab countries had numerical superiority, but they made such bad decisions that they lost in 6 days what had taken them decades to build. Their commanders distrusted each other. Their communications failed. It was as if a supernatural fog had descended on their war rooms. In the Yom Kippur War, Egypt and Syria had the perfect surprise attack. The first 48 hours were a disaster for Israel. And then, inexplicably, both countries made military decisions that turned their advantage into a crushing defeat. Egypt decided to expand its attack beyond the coverage of its anti-aircraft missiles, exposing its forces to the Israeli Air Force. Syria made an equally irrational decision, and in a moment, their advantage was gone. Confusion in the horses, madness in the riders. It's what Zechariah saw. And here's the most chilling part of all. Zechariah said this would happen when all nations of the earth are gathered against Jerusalem. For decades, the conflicts were regional. But now, for the first time, we're seeing all nations of the earth, not militarily, but diplomatically in the United Nations, in the Security Council, in the International Court of Justice, gathering against Jerusalem. The burdensome stone is getting heavier, and soon, very soon, we're going to see who gets cut in pieces when they try to lift it. This is the key that opens the door to the final, most glorious event. It is after Israel's enemies are defeated, and the nation realizes that its survival wasn't due to its own military might, but because of a divine hand. It is at that very moment that the third sign, the ultimate sign, will kick in. It's the sign that will not only change Israel forever, but will trigger the greatest revival in the history of the world. And believe me, what I'm about to share is the climax of this story. It's so powerful, so specific, and so beautiful that it will bring you to tears. Make sure you don't miss a single moment of what's to come. It's a truth that I believe God has been waiting for us to discover, and I'm so grateful to have you here to experience it with me. So we've seen the first two signs. We've seen Israel become a nation in a single day, an impossible, miraculous event. We've watched as they became a cup of trembling, a source of irrational obsession for the nations around them. And we've seen Jerusalem become a burdensome stone, cutting to pieces every nation that has ever tried to move it. But these events, as incredible as they are just the setup for the grand finale. The real climax, the moment that Zechariah saw from 2,500 years in the past, is the third and most staggering sign of all. And this, my friends, is the moment that will change everything, not just for Israel, but for every single one of us. Zechariah 12, verse 10. The words of this verse should send a shiver down your spine because they describe a moment in time that is so specific, so deeply personal, that it could only be from God himself. The prophet writes, "And I will pour on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. Then they will look on me whom they have pierced. Yes, they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and grieve for him as one grieves for a firstborn." Just absorb that for a moment. God says he will pour out a spirit of grace on the Jewish people, and then, only then, will they look upon him whom they have pierced. Think about the sheer impossibility of that prophecy. Zechariah wrote those words 500 years before Jesus was even born. How could he possibly have known that the Messiah would be pierced? Crucifixion was not a Jewish form of execution, it was a Roman one. Jews stoned people to death. But when the Roman soldiers crucified Jesus, they pierced his hands, his feet, and his side with a spear. The Apostle John, writing his gospel decades later, specifically quoted this very verse from Zechariah to show that even the manner of Jesus' death was prophesied. It's breathtaking. This means that when the Jewish people as a nation finally have the scales fall from their eyes, they won't just see a great teacher or a prophet. They'll see the nail marks. They'll see the spear wound. And they will have the most profound, gut-wrenching realization imaginable that the man their ancestors crucified 2,000 years ago was truly their Messiah. But here's the crucial part, the detail that unlocks the entire timeline. Notice the order of events in the prophecy. The spiritual outpouring comes before the recognition. It is an act of divine intervention, not a result of human evangelism or political pressure. This means that Israel's acceptance of Jesus as Messiah won't happen because we preached hard enough or prayed long enough. It will happen in a supernatural instant, a moment of divine revelation. And according to the biblical timeline, this intervention happens after the enemies of Israel are defeated and the nation realizes that its repeated survival wasn't due to its military might, but because God was protecting them for a purpose. It is at that moment of awe and wonder, that sudden clarity, that the third sign kicks in. And what happens after that? What happens when this argument, the greatest argument against Christianity for 2 millennia, is finally removed? What happens when the very people from whom Jesus came, the very people he came to save, proclaim him as their Messiah? According to the Apostle Paul in Romans 11, it will unleash the greatest revival in human history. Paul writes, "For if their being cast away is the reconciling of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead?" Do you realize what that means? When Israel returns to faith, it won't just be another spiritual event. It will be an event so massive, so powerful, that it will be like the entire world rising from the dead. But there's one more detail, one final piece of this staggering puzzle that ties everything together. Jesus himself connected his return to this very moment. In Matthew 23:39, he said to Jerusalem, "I say to you, you shall see me no more till you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" The very words we shouted on Palm Sunday. Do you understand the implication of that? Christ's return is directly and inextricably linked to Israel's acceptance of him as Messiah. The very moment they proclaim him, the door opens for the king's return. The cup of trembling, the burdensome stone, and the spirit of grace, they are not just random events. They are the keys to a divine lock, a chain of events that is setting the stage for the second coming of our Lord. This isn't just a beautiful story. It's the beautiful, terrifying, and awe-inspiring truth of our time. It's why you and I are here, watching this, listening to his word. And I pray that as you've listened, a newfound sense of awe, a greater depth of faith has taken hold of you. Because what we've talked about today, it's not the end, it's the glorious beginning.